Like we said last night, Genesis 15, in my opinion, is the most important chapter in the book of Genesis. And if you can understand what's going on in Genesis chapter 15, it opens up a whole new revelation of what Christ did on the cross for all of us. And here we see Abram, which is the man that God picked to literally pour through his seed, the laws, what pleases God, how to live, the relationships that God wants to have between God and man, man and God, and between one another. And here this man basically represents all the people that are saved, for he is the father of our faith. And I want to pick up in here as we start looking at the covenant relationship that the Lord wanted to make with man, represented by Abraham. And God said, and the Lord said to Abraham, let's back up into verse 6, talking about Abraham, and he believed in the Lord, and he counted to it for righteousness. Simply by believing God, you become righteous in that aspect. For he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought you out of the Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord, whereby shall I know I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, take me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto them all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abraham drove them away. Now let's look at what God has asked Abraham to do. Here Abraham has walked from the Ur of the Chaldees to Haran, down to Canaan, down to Egypt, came back, had a separation of him from Lot. Lot was captured by the 4 kings out of the Persian Gulf and held hostage and took captive to be a slave. Abraham, with 318 men, went and defeated this army with such a few force, but with the presence of God with him, took back all the spoils, took back all the captives, came back, paid tithes to Melchizedek, set the captives free, and now Abraham is saying, look, you said you're going to give me this land. How do I know that you're going to do this? In other words, how do I know I will inherit a land? How will I know that my seed will be of the sand of the sea and the stars of the sky? And basically, it's how will I have children, number one, and how will you protect them, number two, and how will you prosper them to have control over this land? Those are 3 questions Abraham was asking God when he said, how do I know you're going to do this? And the Lord said, I want you to take me 5 animals. Now 5 is the number of grace. The 5-fold ministry, the 5 books of the Torah, the 5 porches of Bethsaida, the 5 stones that David picked up to throw at Goliath. And every time you see a series of 5, that is the grace of God being applied. So he said, basically, Abraham, how am I going to do this? I'm going to cut covenant with you. I'm going to have a blood covenant with you, and I'm going to enter into a blood covenant relationship where the 2 parties can now become one again. You can look at it like a marriage covenant, where 2 become one. And the way 2 become one is the 2 have to walk in agreement through the blood of an innocent, sinless sacrifice. And through that blood of an innocent, sinless sacrifice, the 2 become one. Now, we're going to get into some things that the Bible doesn't say, but I learned from Dr. Carl Koch in the Timothy program about what is significant about a covenant. What does it mean to enter into a covenant with a man, a blood covenant with a man, or with God himself? Well, the first thing in a blood covenant is there's a stronger party and there's a weaker party in any covenant. And the stronger party basically tells the weaker party what to do. And the weaker party has to do the will of the stronger party. Now, in this relationship, obviously, God's stronger. And Abraham's the weaker party. But the stronger party has a responsibility in order to provide to the weaker party the ability to do the will of the stronger party. So I guess an example would be in a wife and husband relationship. If the husband wants the wife to cook a meal, then he has to provide a house, a kitchen, the utensils, the food, in order for his wife to accomplish his will. So you see, there's responsibility on both parties. The weaker does the will of the greater, but the greater has to enable the weaker one to achieve what he's wanting to do. Now, I know we're running out of time tonight, but we're going to pick up on this tomorrow night and talking about the significance of a blood covenant, because there are things that are exchanged. In other words, everything that the weaker party has now becomes the possession of the stronger party. And everything the stronger party has is now accessible to the weaker party. So that when they go into battle, they both go with what they have. And this is the brilliance, and this is the significance of the covenant that points directly at Jesus Christ some 2,000 years later, when he was walking up the Via Dolorosa, the street of tears, the street of blood, towards his crucifixion on Golgotha.